great weekend. I hope all of you did as well. This may also be you. This is definitely us. Very much the whole MAGFest vibe. Let's keep rolling. Last one. This is pretty much Sunday. So who are we really? So I'm James. I'm an artist / animator. I worked on Them's Fightin' Hurts, which is actually an indie game that was exhibited in MIBS for a couple of years. I've also been going to MAGFest for, I've kind of lost count, it's like 8 or 10 or 9 or something like that. So
quite a few notches in the belt at this point.
Yeah. I also volunteered for the first time this year. This is my first panel. I did all that on top of that, so I'm pretty exhausted. Thank you.
And I'm Aaron. I worked with James on Them's Fightin' Herds. I was the production director at Main 6, so I made sure that people were doing their work. And this is Thomas.
Hi, I'm Thomas. I know these two, and I like games.
Yeah! he's also our curiosity guru. Thomas is
that's his title in here.
Yes, he is interested in a wide variety of topics and loves to do deep dives on things. He is also a DIY and retro gaming hardware enthusiast.
That's me.
Yeah, so like I said, we were featured in MIBS a couple times, so when we kind of, we actually won the Shining Award, whatever that is, last year.
Like best presentation or something.
Yeah, let's go with that. And we just want to kind of get back, get more involved with people, so here we are. Let's go. So why rest? Why are we talking about this? What's so interesting about doing nothing? Before we talk about that, this panel started, this is a little bit of a shout out to the MAGFest 21 Plus Facebook group. This was, on the left is the original fun post about submitting an 8-hour panel for napping. So I actually got way more feedback than I expected, and then I had posted again about it, and then kind of decided, this could actually be sort of an interesting topic. What can I do to make it more than just a meme? So I put a little thought into it, and I submitted the idea, and this is a screen cap of my acceptance, which was pretty cool. And then it was really cool. I got to host a panel on MAGFest, and this is me about 6 or so days ago.
Way longer.
Was it? Yeah, I guess. I've been thinking about it for a long time. But really, so why rest? I feel like I guess we don't really go to a huge amount of panels, but have you ever seen a panel about this topic before?
For something so common that everyone relates to, there's not a lot of people talking about it within the context of media. There's lots of science, there's lots of wellness, but rest is everywhere. It informs our culture. We build our entire lives around it. So it's very central to who we are as humans. And I think it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, no, agreed. And it is very much informed a lot of the way games are created, made, worked around, used in a lot of different aspects, which we're going to get into in a minute. But, yeah.
It's also kind of interesting because there aren't a lot of games that feature it as a core mechanic. Lots of games about running, jumping, etc., as we're going to talk about in a little bit. And lots of games feature it as something integral to the experience, but a lot of times it's not the main feature. So I just mentioned running, jumping, etc. Why not that stuff? I think we're familiar with a few games that are about running. All the way back to one of the original games about running. And if you can compare that to a much more modern game about running, really running is represented in much the same way. It might be a little wild to say, but you're moving from point A to point B. It becomes, it's something that we kind of end up taking for granted because it's just like part of being human, right? And I feel like any game that has a run function, I mean, both of these games, it's one input, right?
It's an explicit verb that's used often. You see games use repeated verbs and actions on a regular basis, and as a core concept, the verb of sleep is not something that gets included in games frequently. There are examples, but it's not Mario. It's not
Mario.
From Mirror's Edge. Fate.
Yeah. So yeah, running is normally pretty simple, unless you're playing co-op, which is a game about running, but that's a whole other story. Jumping, also kind of a fun example. Again, we can compare Mario to stuff like BattleTech, both digital and non-digital. You can defeat enemies that way. They literally used to call it, or still do call it, death from above. So you can take your giant 100-ton mech and just jump on a guy, and they're done, just like a Goomba.
Well, and it's a specific action. It has a defined rule set in Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Absolutely.
You have your movement and you have jump, which gets its own classification.
It gets whatever your player token is into the air.
Exactly.
Just like in checkers.
You don't have to roll for checkers.
You could, though. Oh yeah, I hadn't noted in there, unless we're talking about hyperspace, can you think of any games that do use jump in like a weird or different way? Is that a thing?
He uses jump in a very normal way, I'm sorry.
I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind is like Outer Wilds, because you don't have gravity everywhere, and so jumping is not really just like, oh, I'm going to go up and then down. It's like I'm literally going to travel in this direction for a while.
Yeah, but I feel like that kind of mirrors that Dead Space sort of zero-G section, like sort of jump coming into the day. Not incorrect, but it's one of those.
Is it a jump if you're in orbit?
Yeah, it's jump and these are raised.
Fair. Anyway, we're not here to talk about jumping, but let's talk about eating. I'm sure everyone in this hall is like super psyched about Hungry Hippos.
Oh yeah.
Barely a word name.
The big hippos.
But it's really interesting, I think, to compare. Like eating is also very often represented in a similar way when you like boil it down. Your character or your avatar or you as a player like consume something and you get something out of it, right? Some kind of buff, some kind of HP, some kind of anything. So you just get something in return. If you're Kirby, you can steal your enemy's powers.
Well, it's not used as a direct action even necessarily. You've got berries and held items and equipment, right?
Yeah.
And it triggers automatically and is eaten or consumed. It shows up mechanistically in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Another example. All right, resting, on the other hand, is what we should be talking about. So let's keep going. There's a few terms that kind of come to mind, and the interesting thing about rest as well is that there's a lot of terms that are associated with it. And so just kind of running through a few of them. Sleep, obviously, something we could all be doing right now. Stuff like cooldowns, it's probably not what people would originally or instantly think of when you think of wrestling games, but it is sort of a form of it. Meditation, not a lot of games include that. I think there's another slide about that a little bit later, so I'm just going to keep rolling. Unconsciousness, even.
Technically, you are resting.
Yes, you have been rested.
You have been rested upon.
And even death is a form of rest, right? Rest in peace. Rest in peace is a little Jenga game. We're gonna avoid the Final Fantasy VII spoiler. Any other like common terms that come to mind?
Don't, I think.
I mean, relaxation is a big
Relax.
Oh, sure, yeah.
rejuvenation in that sense. But no.
I'm surprised. I actually thought of one this weekend, and I'm surprised you didn't think of it. It's, what would you call it in music?
Oh, it's
Rest.
Yeah. Actually, that has a similar. That's an excellent example. There's a reason why.
Why, thank you.
Why you were in the middle of this panel.
All right, so let's actually get into this. There's actually surprisingly few games about rest, like I mentioned before. Even this one board game in the middle is interesting. It is from 1891, and it's called Seven Sleepers, and it plays kind of similarly to checkers, where you move your guys, and these yellow pieces in the middle are neutral. And you win the game by capturing them and also by moving your pieces into your opponent's starting spaces. And there's there's actually an old biblical story that involves Seven Sleepers, and it's kind of unclear if that's based on it or not. But the point I'm trying to make is still not really about sleeping, right? They use the term sleepers to indicate that these are neutral pieces that don't move on their own. It just kind of puts you in that mindset of this entity that I can capture, but is otherwise not going to do anything.
Yeah, coincidentally named sleepers, but not really anything representing rest or sleep besides the fact that they're stationary pawns.
Yeah, and there's a fair amount of board games. I found a lot of kids games that are to help kids learn about going to bed, bedtime, and it's just little easy kind of memory games and that kind of thing. That one called Sleepy Time is from 1974, which is kind of cool. And of course the very blatantly obvious ones like Don't Wake Daddy and Don't Wake Whittaker, which are horrifying. I also found this this game simply called Sleep on Board Game Geek. But as far as I can tell, it's vaporware. There's no reviews, there's no pictures, there's nothing about it. So I don't know if anyone here has heard of that game or has played it, but there's nothing. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right.
Nothing about the sleepy jam.
Dreaming is another big one. And despite all of, actually, I'm going to rewind. Despite being represented in a very nice aesthetic way, dreaming in Animal Crossing is also not really about rest, right? It's just kind of presented as
It's the guys.
It's a context for more story content.
Right. Exactly. Which is a perfect segue. So there's lots of games where rest or sleeping or unconsciousness, etc., are kind of used to contextualize everything that we do in the game. Thomas, you wanted to talk about Little Nemo?
I wanted to talk about Zelda, but yeah.
Oh, there's plenty of time for Zelda.
Little Nemo in Dream Master is just another one where you get a dreamlike world. You are a sleeping character. I don't know if anyone's seen the animated film, TMS animation. It's gorgeous. You should watch it if you have not. It's one that is using the term sleep, but doesn't really have much to do with the act of rest or sleeping. It's using that to set you in a kind of dreamlike wonderland that you can interact with enemies in. But yeah, in that kind of sense, it doesn't necessarily line up with, there's nothing explicitly restful besides you ride around in bed.
That just made me think of Bedman.
Oh my god, that character is strange.
We can talk about fighting games in a little bit. This other board game here is something called Sleeping Gods, which is a really cool, navigational sort of storytelling game. That one is also, these gods are asleep. It's As a player, you move around and just sort of try to like gain their favor or their attention. I haven't actually played it myself, so I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to be wrong. Dreamfall is a pretty cool little, like basically a point-and-click adventure game where the main character is able to travel between two different dimensions by sleeping. And then, of course, LSD Dream Emulator, something that is just trying to emulate something that happens while you sleep.
And nothing else.
Yeah, Kirby's Dream Land. You kept saying that he's not actually sleeping.
Yeah, I view this as use of the word dream in a creative sense. It's dreamlike, is in full of wonderment, as opposed to dreaming gotten from sleep. Cool. We're in a dreamlike world.
And Zelda 2, Zelda's asleep the whole time. Link's Awakening, getting unconscious on the beach.
Link's asleep.
In fact, I like to give Link's Awakening a little bit of extra attention and credit because it is probably the first game that involves a dream within a dream. Yeah, since spoilers, okay, this game's pretty old, so Link's Awakening takes place within a dream, hence the title. And then there's this dungeon called the Dream Shrine where you go in, you get in bed, you fall asleep, and that's how you get into the dungeon.
And actually, you need to go back there more than once. It's a repeated theme. It's something that seemingly they want to reinforce. So it's making sure that you're paying attention to the theme of sleep. So actively sending you into a dream while you're dreaming more than once.
Yeah.
It's an interesting motif.
If you have ever been so exhausted that you dream about sleeping, that game is for you. Like I said. Let's keep talking about Zelda. Really kind of an interesting thing when I started digging into this. Almost all Zelda games start with the character asleep or unconscious or waking up in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if that really means anything, but it's also... I don't want to spoil it. Can you guys think of any Zeldas that don't?
No, in fact, this is the first time I've realized that that's true. Like, I don't know. I think that Link is the player's connection to the world, and when you're waking up in this world, that's the entryway. Like there was nothing before because the player's not playing the game, and you're just like, I'm here now. And what better way to enter the world of waking than to wake up?
I see someone raising their hand back there.
I'm pretty sure, because I've played all the Zelda games, so I'm a fucking nerd. Zelda's 1 and 2 do not involve him being asleep. Zelda 2 started with Zelda being asleep, and then Link's Awakening started the tradition of Link waking up at the start of every game.
Right. I think actually there may be one other in the Capcom lineage.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah. The Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, I don't believe, start with him asleep. They start with the scene at the end, wasn't it? But
Oh, yeah.
I'd still call those
Yeah.
are fake because they're not made by Nintendo.
I actually really like the implication of starting a Zelda game or any RPG that starts that way, really with the implication of everything you were doing before this moment has been a dream. Now this is real life. Welcome to Hyrule. And in fact, as I was saying, a lot of classic games start that way. Sailor Moon RPG, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy VIII, Mega Man Battle Network, Baldur's Gate 2. It's like one of his favorite games.
Yeah, in Baldur's Gate 2 specifically, you're asleep because a mad wizard is trying to steal your powers and you're slipping in and out of consciousness. So it's quite a violent awakening. What's up?
Baldur's Gate 3 also starts the same way. You are rousing from unconsciousness. Admittedly,
that's
you
true.
have also been kidnapped by alien squids, but...
That's right.
Yeah. Good reason to
And
fall asleep.
there's a whole subplot with the Dream Visitor, right?
Yes, the Dream Visitor.
And of course, we're all familiar with this example. It is so common, there's actually a trope named after this. Because, of course, your favorite RPG.
Yeah, clearly the best example.
Yep.
Yeah, that, and it's a returned element that's, you need to go back and, spoilers for anyone that hasn't played Chrono Trigger, Chrono dies halfway through, and you need to return with a clone of him to bring him back to life midpoint in the game, and you revive him from there.
There you go. Interestingly enough, that's also where Deltarune gets it from. Any Deltarune fans here?
I'm very excited for the game to be finished. I had a tradition for a while where I would play Undertale from start to finish after every MAGFest. And Deltarune is just like everything, all the mechanics and all the juiciness from the previous games brought forward. So I'm very excited to see that project finished.
Will you be doing that again this year?
Yes, I think so.
Skyward Sword, why did I put this in here? Oh yeah, because Skyward Sword, I believe, is the first Zelda game where sleep was like mechanically represented, where it's a function the player can execute and actually get something out of. It is also the first and only game I can think of where you can fall asleep on the toilet. That's a thing.
He's actually just into it.
Yeah. Let's get back on track. So this slide, there's a lot of games where on the surface it might seem like there's no rest at all, right? Big AAA action blockbusters, Uncharted, Halo, Tomb Raider, etc. The newer Tomb Raiders do have like a camping mechanic, but I'm talking like obviously like the old school ones where it's just, dungeon delving and fighting off animals with machine guns and everything. Anyway, so it would appear that they don't have any rest at all, or no mechanics related to it at least, and it's otherwise not present, right?
Not really. I mean, it's it's not literally sleep, but it's still rest. In almost any form of art, artists will create peaks and valleys to help sustain people's attention and interest. So music is an obvious example. You can't just like blast people with 11-volume chip rave for hours. At some point, someone's going to need to calm down and then get hyped back up again and then calm down. So there's always like a roller coaster of ups and downs, and those periods of rest in between the action are used a lot in action games like Mass Effect, Halo, Devil May Cry, to help the player reset between the different big action pieces. Gears of War also, the first Gears of War has a lot of really cool stuff happening in between the stop and pop, cover, shooting mechanics. You can look at things, you can talk to your squad mates, you can recover your health, you can explore, and these are all rest activities, relatively speaking, in an action game.
And what do you think happens if designers don't keep this in mind?
People will they'll create their own rest. Like if you do not sleep, sleep will find you. Like if you don't schedule sleep, sleep will schedule you. People will just naturally become fatigued on their own, and if the designer is not controlling when the rest happens, the player might just leave the experience altogether and be gone before you even really get to the meat of whatever you're playing, you're listening to, or doing.
Yeah. You mentioned Gears of War. Are there any other games, like board game or otherwise, that you feel like do this really successfully?
I'm trying to think of one that has phases. There is a game that I was introduced to recently called Beast, which has day and night mechanics. So during the day, You're out hunting for the beast, you're tracking it down, you're trying to ambush it and stop it from moving around the map freely. And then at some point, everyone's exhausted all of their cards, all of their actions, and you need to rest to recover. And during the night phase, you get your powers back, you reset everything on the board, and you have a chance to upgrade your character so that you're ready for the next hunt the following day. So yeah.
Sweet.
Play Beast, it's really good.
Play Beast. There's also, this is kind of an interesting one as well, I think. Now that we're thinking in more abstract terms, one of the descriptions I put in the guidebook is the design implications of doing nothing, which is a really nice phrase, I think. But what does that actually mean? There's a lot of games like RPGs, etc. Like going back to the game as basic as chess. I mean, basic, I should not call it chess basic, but mechanistically simple, right? You make a move, you pass your turn, right? When it's not your turn, you can rest, right? There's nothing else to do, right?
Wrong. You're still thinking about what you're going to do next. So
Right.
it's a preparation phase almost. And you can also use it to like engage in some low-level psychological warfare with your opponent. Just kind of like give them funny looks to psych them out.
Stuff on the floor or whatever. But it is still active.
Of course. And I mean, you can play like speed chess or just time chess with the clock, and that adds to the whole thing. And where the amount of time taken can actually matter, and that just changes everything. This is not a panel about chess, though. It's also just largely a conceit for board games that where you can't do everything all at once, so you have to take turns. You have to let people do their thing.
However, there is like, just as a minor note, there are times, I've seen this in a couple JRPGs, like especially in the Persona series, where there is a guard action, but it's almost never the best thing to do tactically. It's always better to just delete your enemies as fast as possible and then just end the fight, and that's when you get to rest. But there are some times in big boss battles where the game's like, oh man, the enemy's gonna do a big super attack, you better hit O, and it's like, alright, cool, I will do as you ask, because I don't want my party to get wiped, but it doesn't feel like it's almost asking you to arbitrarily pause the like play-by-play, edge of your seat, tactical decision-making that you're doing because the enemy's doing their super attack. So that's kind of an example, personally speaking, of when being told to wait is like not fun. That can't be played.
Just as a note to add on to that, I feel like that was a direct creation from, again, Chrono Trigger when you're fighting the UR. I think it is.
I was just going to ask, why can't you do that in Chrono Trigger?
Which, that's one of those you probably should have. There are encounters that are designed specifically around you not attacking in one way, shape, or form. Which, in that case, you get delivered a powerful counterattack if you attack the enemy either physically or elementally, which turns into a problem when you run into the first one when you just can't attack physically, which means use items, stall essentially, which not being given a weight option is problematic in that context.
Yes, it sounds like the fight's kind of designed for you to burn items.
Yeah, or burn time in one way, shape, or form without the option to rest.
How about that?
Yeah, like just to summarize that, it is the option to use no resources.
Exactly.
I'm going to neutral my turn.
So how are we doing on time?
We're about halfway in.
through. All right, cool. Let's talk about time. Rest is, in a lot of games, is a way to pass the time. I'm really glad I was able to find this day-night cycle for GTA 5. Thankfully, the game Sleeping Dogs is a big open world game, and there is a rest function in that, a sleeping function. No dogs though. Of course, we're all familiar, probably, with Skyrim, all the Bethesda resting, waiting, etc. And Aaron, do you want to tell us more about?
Yeah. Oh, I love talking about Persona. Yeah. So something that's unique or not as common, I should say, in RPGs is when time is the primary structure of the game, the primary resource. You spend a lot of time outside of dungeons in Persona games, building up your team, bonding with your squad mates, all that sort of thing. And then when you've sort of used all your actions for the day, because it is a phase of gameplay, you decide to go to sleep and then pass to the next day. So time is a resource, and resting is the gateway between each of the different phases of play. So you're like taking turns basically each day and using rest to cap off the day.
It sounds like it's in that. It sounds like it's in the dating sim model of you only have a given amount of time in the day, and engaging with someone or something burns a chunk of that time, and then resume when you have day as a cap. Is that right?
More or less, because it's not a real-time clock, right? It's like you
No.
have a set
The event
of
triggers.
actions you can do.
Yeah, anytime you kick off an action, it advances time, but the player is the one in control of when that happens.
Right. Yeah. And then you get kind of the clock hits pause until you decide.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, yeah.
So you can go around the whole city 5 million times, and only when you go and have drinks with your friend, that advances time.
I think it's a good thing to spend time on.
All right, let's talk about a short rest versus long rest.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
So yeah, the name of the panel is A Short Rest, which is in the modern gaming lexicon right now, thanks to Baldur's Gate 3. The short rest mechanic actually was introduced in 4th edition D&D as a way to give players just a little bit of a top-off between encounters. In earlier editions, in 3.5, there wasn't really a structured phase for recovering between encounters. You kind of just like, all right, who needs healing? Like, I guess I'll just like spend a couple of wand charges on you. Like, we put a lot of emphasis on the healers of the party to make sure everybody was topped off. And then characters like fighters and like pretty much no one had a way to recover any of their abilities that they used. So you had to really measure your resources out across the entire day instead of being able to spend some stuff during an encounter and then get it back immediately for the next one. So 4th edition introduced the concept of encounter powers, which you can use like kind of a medium level power resource and then like use it because it'll just come back after every encounter, the short rest. And in game time, short rests were 5 minutes in 4th edition because that's the flavor of 4th edition. It was more about like getting into the action, fighting a lot of people as quickly as possible. 5th edition kind of scaled that back and made it a little bit more, I guess, realistic or immersive, and short rests became an hour. So you can do a lot with short rests in 5th edition compared to 4th. But because they're more powerful and a lot of classes have mechanics that are central to short rests, like warlocks, they kind of needed a way to balance that out so that warlocks didn't get infinite spells compared to wizards. And instead it's like, okay, there's some risk now to short rests where you have to like find a safe space and make sure nobody wanders in on you, things like that. And long rests, of course, haven't changed much. You do basically a full reset where everybody goes to sleep, everybody gets their stuff back, and in the beginning, in the next day, like your whole party's ready to go.
What I love, especially in 5th edition, how they've given you so much more freedom with doing not just like sleeping. It's not just a decision of am I sleeping for 8 hours or am I doing something else. It's as long as you're doing like a low level activity, something else to like chill out. There's like artificers can build their little pet in that amount of time, and it still counts as a long rest. And they kind of like found new ways to gamify and there's they've allowed for opportunities to role play
Yes.
during rest.
There are downtime activities. If you want to go even further, if you want like rest between adventures, there's stuff that players can do with their characters, like craft items, and it takes days to do that. And it's those are like long rests. But there's choices. Yes, there's choices like that at every tier: the short rest, the long rest, and the long rest that we've just coined the term for. Yeah.
Also, it says steel. The artificer gets
A steel defender, yeah. So if you came in here to spend your hit die, now's the time to do it.
Everybody roll.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to ask if you all are familiar with the Pathfinder 2nd Edition method of resting and recovering.
I haven't dug into Pathfinder 2nd Edition yet.
So with Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it does put a lot of focus on time in regards to everybody needs 8 hours of sleep. You can spend 4 days to craft a magical item, etc. But there's no technical short rest or long rest mechanics. You can make your daily preparations, and that's your long rest at the end of your 8 hours of sleep or whatever you're doing, but that can happen at any point during the day. You don't need to go to bed at night. Something like that. In addition, there's no short rest mechanics, but there are things that expend downtime, exploration activities. One of the major things that D&D has yet to pick up on, and I want it to, is the treat wounds mechanic, where you spend 10 minutes with a healer's kit treating somebody's wounds, make a medicine check, and then they recover health. There's the refocus activity, where certain spellcasters have special spells that they spend special points on, but you can only get those back when you spend 10 minutes meditating, or you spend 10 minutes reconsulting your spell book and stuff like that. And
Cool. Thank you for your footnote.
Very fun way
we got to move on.
Yeah, thank you. And these
regardless.
tools in RPGs would be a whole other topic. So let's look at using a short rest versus a long rest versus how they appear in Baldur's Gate.
Right, yeah. So we were obviously bringing a tabletop RPG to a digital format requires some design decisions. So in Baldur's Gate 3, short rest is hitting a button and everybody goes, and then everyone's topped off and that's it. It's not an hour long, it's not like a setup camp thing, it's just you click a button. So they kind of decided that it would take the form of a resource, some way to top off your characters between the longer camping sessions where you talk to everybody and advance the story and things like that. It does feel like a little cheap because you just click a button and it looks the same as doing potions or whatever, but I understand why they did it. Like sometimes those are the choices you have to make when you are adapting mediums.
Yeah, and since there isn't like a whole lot of non-linear role-playing in that game, and there's no real reason to spend an hour like talking amongst 6 characters at a table. It kind of makes sense that they would want to fast forward through it and just have it be over with.
Truncate the amount of time you're sitting there doing any given activity but resting.
Yeah, and then how about a long rest?
Yeah, the long rests are actually probably more involved in Baldur's Gate than they are in the tabletop RPG. Like,
How so?
because you use it to like talk to your companions and advance your romance, and there's also like time-sensitive events that happen only when you long rest. So there's characters that you'll rescue from something and then they'll go back to camp and wait for you to talk to them, but only after you've triggered a long rest. So the game wants you to take time to recharge and not just slog through it, because there's story that takes place when you guys are just at camp.
Yeah, I like that they look to resources that as well in the form of the camp supplies. So you can't just long rest whenever you want necessarily. Unless you're like me and you check in every single box and barrel you come across, and then you just have a hoard of camp supplies.
Yeah, you can't spam rest. It's a deliberate action that you need to take using camp supplies.
I will also note here, I think it's interesting that they took the time to make socialization in context of character-to-character interaction linked to rest. That seems deliberate and, I think, well thought out. Restful to catch up with people. It's restful to see your friends as opposed to engage in interaction or out in the world.
That was one of my favorite parts about Mass Effect 2. You would come back from a mission and then talk to everybody on the ship and then go on the next mission.
Right, yeah. The Normandy was kind of your camp.
Exactly. Space game. Space game.
So there's a lot of games where rest kind of correlates to progress. Sorry, was that about the previous slide or this one?
It was actually about the previous slide. One other place that I've seen that done non-RPG, Oregon Trail.
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's intentionally a part, and it's not story related. It's just
Yeah.
you need to do that.
You got to do it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Or you will die.
Yep.
You'll rest forever.
Absolutely.
So
Rest
yeah,
now,
that
rest
actually kind
forever.
of leads perfectly to this, where games where like resting is one way or another linked to progressing through the game. So Minecraft, setting up a bed, the icon of rest gives you a safe place to respawn. Same with Terraria. Same with a lot of survival games out there. Even again GTA, like you literally have to go to bed to save the game. And stuff like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, Story of Seasons, all those kind of farming sim games, you have to rest, or the game will make you rest.
Exactly. Rest now or rest forever.
And it actually some of them penalize you if you don't by taking up more time in the morning, and you miss out on that.
Yeah, you like wake up with less endurance.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's arbitrary or not, but I like to draw a correlation to it. The bed is used in Terraria at least to indicate your spawn point, so it gives it a real importance of sleep is your home. You respawn where that bed is.
This board game pictured here on the lower right is called Tokaido, which is a really, I think, beautifully made game that I like a lot, and it's about you're traveling across, I think it's like feudal Japan, and if you see these like long strings of little circles here, those are each inns, and players, the whole point is you kind of visit each of these little locations on your tour, you make different collections of items, that's how you get points depending on which collections that you get, and everyone has to stop at each inn. There's like, I think 5 of them on the board, and the order in which you rest, the order in which you arrive at the inn determines the player order for the next segment. And so by getting in early, you can make sure that you are the first one out and have first pick of spaces. Because each space can only be occupied by one player. So if someone else gets there before you, you're locked out. But if you get to the inn too soon, you're giving up additional chances to get things. You might miss stuff. And just balancing that is, I think there's a really nice message in there about life.
Yeah.
Some more examples about how rest can relate to progress. The myth of being well rested in Fallout, getting an experience bonus when you sleep in a bed. Oblivion, what was that? Elder Scrolls 4, right? Oblivion?
Yes.
Yeah. You had to rest to level up. You gain experience the whole time, but you don't actually improve your character until you level up, and that's when you make all your decisions. We've mentioned Zelda a whole lot. This is also, the newer Zeldas have started to give you little bonuses. If you stay in better lodgings, you get some like temporary hearts. And stamina.
There's also the rest mechanic in MMOs, like World of Warcraft, and you can like kind of look at this a few different ways. Like the developers are giving you a bonus for not playing the game, but it's like not only like you can interpret this as like, oh, maybe they don't want you to spend your entire life playing this game. Maybe they do want to like encourage you to go outside. But I feel like if in more practical terms, it might just be that so that people who don't play as often don't fall as far behind. So if you want to play less, if you want to take the game more casually, you won't be completely useless when you jump in like 3 days later and your friends have all been playing like that whole time. They get diminishing returns because they're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. They're still ahead of you, but they're not like miles ahead. So the rest mechanic is a big staple of MMOs to help keep players in relative progress with each other.
I also I like it as a design solution where I have a question on here that says, if you didn't have to sleep, would you? Right?
Things would be very different.
Things would be different. And in a lot of video games, you don't have to rest, but this is a way of kind of making it part of your character's life, right? The other shot I have in here is, it's not very readable, but Final Fantasy 15 kind of does the same thing as Oblivion, where you have to rest in order to tabulate your experience and level up. And it also gives you an experience bonus if you stay in nicer places.
One that kind of directly translates into what Baldur's Gate 3 is doing, right? Just to link it back, that it's one of those, you're not just resting, you're establishing a camp with your friends. It's a chance for you to, more or less directly, depending on the situation, but associate with your comrades and finish the day. It gives it more of a some finish to the day as opposed to just sleep in that case.
Yeah, you're not just conking out here.
Yeah.
Like I said, the myth of being a couple more examples. So rest can be a source of power, right? In this case, unfortunately, none of us have actually played as the Kalashtar, but they are a species in Dungeons and Dragons that actually I think came about in 3rd edition for quite a while.
Yes, I kind of missed them. But yeah, 3rd edition is when they were introduced.
Yeah, so they're kind of like Genasi, but instead of being part human, part elemental, they're like part human, part dream spirit, which gives rise to like a lot of cool ideas, and their flavor and power comes from the dream spirit side, and it's just talking about visions and memories and just kind of pulling from the ether, having these weird experiences, and they can be very roleplay heavy, which is pretty cool. All right, let's talk about some fighting games. Here's a couple Sleepy BBs. So, rest is probably not the first thing you think of when you think of fighting games. All right. So, the dude on the left is named Maiden-kun. He is from King of Fighters 14 and 15. And when I got my hands on him to play him, I was a little disappointed because so besides him being just generally animated as being very sleepy, and he fights with a pillow that's like literally his weapon, he only has one move that is part of his super attack. If you don't do anything after his super attack, he'll go to sleep and regain meter that way, which is risky and kind of cool, but it ends up not being very viable competitively. Which on the flip side, so this is actually a character from Them's Fighting Nerds, which is the game that Aaron and I worked on. You want to talk a little bit about Nidra?
Yeah, so Nidra, all of the characters in Them's Fighting Herds are ungulates. They're hoofed mammals. And Nidra is a tapir. We wanted to create a character that related to dreams and mysticism, and there's a lot of myths and legends surrounding the tapir with sleep and dreaming. So she practices night magic, and part of night magic is sleeping and recovering. It's actually how she gets her power. So every character in the game has a magic meter, which they can use to spend on special abilities in fight. And the way Nidra gains magic is you press a button and she flops on the ground and she falls asleep. And then if you stay on the ground for enough time, if you get enough rest, then you have magic that you can use to do really powerful attacks. And she can even go into her sleep move mid-combo. So you can cancel into sleep to get like literally micro naps while you're in the middle of a combo.
Yeah, her sleep is like part of her fighting style, and I think that's really cool.
Well, actually, if I may, I think it's interesting to, at least in my mind, it's interesting to reinforce here that this is, if we're looking at the types of rest, this is a very active use of rest, where in sleep you're not doing much. It's not like that Dungeons and Dragons sense, but it is a proactive action. It's something that must be taken and expended against something else. I don't know. I feel like it's just worth pointing out.
Thank you, Thomas. And we can't talk about fighting rest in fighting games without talking about Jigglypuff. So, Aaron, you're a Lady Smash player.
Oh,
You
yeah.
want to talk about Jigglypuff?
Yeah, so the cool thing about Smash is that they managed to capture the essence of a character and make it feel like that character, even though they're in a genre that they've never been in before. So Captain Falcon has an entire like Sentai moveset based on like, but he's from a racing game. He never gets out of his car once, but they just like, he feels like he should be a Sentai character, so they went for it.
So they made it.
But Jigglypuff, as a very popular character, doesn't have, like, her iconic move is rest. And I think it's super creative how, instead of making it just like a standard recovery ability, they actually gave it offensive capabilities. So when you hit that down B, like, flash, and if you're near her, like, you're dead. And it's just this high risk, high reward, super amazing move that is literally her just going to sleep. But if you get hit by it, like, it's amazing. Like, if you hit someone with it, it's amazing. If you get hit by it, it's like, oh man, like, it's got this high impact iconic play, and it's great.
And not to spoil what's coming up, but I think it's interesting that this was instilling an active attack in sleep before.
Yeah, we can't talk about Jigglypuff without talking about Pokemon. So there's tons of types of rest in Pokemon. That was a really interesting game to look at for this panel because it very explicitly presents there's rest right at the Pokemon Center. There are sleep-based moves. There are sleep-based statuses. It's used as a story element because Snorlax is always going to be there blocking your path. There's sleep-based combos like
Yeah, the whole like yawn, and then what is it like? Sleep talk, I think is the move.
Sleep talk or snore.
Yeah, there's been a few.
Well, that is you as the sleeper doing an attack. There's also the counterpart, which is you put someone to sleep.
Yeah, putting them to sleep and then following it up with like
Right, Dream Eater,
et
yeah.
cetera.
Right.
There's
So-
lots of different ways to engage with the mechanic of sleep in different ways, offensively or defensively.
And so kind of the point we're getting to there is, of course, there's also tons of sleep spells in Dungeons & Dragons, other tabletop games. Magic has a lot of sleep spells. Solid Snake's out there putting people to sleep, so you can sneak by them. Aaron, can you tell me what the heck we're looking at?
Oh boy, Final Fantasy VIII.
Screenshot.
So, Final Fantasy VIII had such a wacky system behind it that was a little bit hard to wrap your head around at first, but then like once you like dive into it, you realize like, man, I can put magic on my attacks and put people to sleep with my sword. Like that's so weird. Sleep as a status effect is very powerful because it takes enemies out of combat for many turns, and being able to put it on your weapon in Final Fantasy VIII, like put the sleep spell on your weapon as a status that it can inflict, means that like normally when you like wake people up with attacks, you're like re-putting them to sleep each time, and it was just a really powerful early game option you could exploit in that game.
Cool.
Oh, you skipped over the magic.
I'm going to make sure we can make it on time.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, like you were saying, putting enemies to sleep can be very powerful. And likewise, rest can actually sometimes be a vulnerability, right? You sneak past or jump on the sleeping piranha plant, sneaking up on enemies in Fallout, etc. Has anyone played Don't Rest Your Head? Hey.
Oh, awesome.
All 2 of us.
Yeah, just briefly, like kind of circling back to tabletop RPGs. Don't Rest Your Head is a game where you are trying to not fall asleep and push the boundaries of sleep as far as you can, and you start seeing stuff. Like, you start going into different dimensions, going insane, you get access to powers. It's all about, like, staying awake as long as possible, and then just experiencing this, like, wacky Alice in Wonderland style world where you're, like, not sure what's dreaming and what's real, while you fight to stay awake.
We should play that sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, rest can be rejuvenating, right? You can meditate, you can regain some stamina. I learned recently that you could rest in Shadow of the Colossus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
I did not know that either.
There you go.
I'm just on my way to the next one.
The shrines you can like sleep at and gain your stamina back faster than normal, I think. I haven't actually gone and tried it myself, so. This is kind of a weird one that I really wanted to point out. This little mug here is actually a game. So it's just called Short Rest, right? Perfect. And it can be played on its own, but it's really meant to be played as an add-on to like a tabletop RPG campaign. And so while your character is short resting, the backside has this kind of map of different terms. And so like you pick up your mug, you take a look at it, and that can kind of give you some ideas of things to reflect on, or for your character to reflect on, really. And the more time that you spend doing that, and the deeper you go into that exploration, you get different rewards for it, including like, I think some things on there like you gain double your hit dice for healing, you can gain like extra experience. It's like pretty simple, but it's a cool concept. And it's on a mug. How many games are on a mug?
2 feet.
Yeah. And so, of course, we got to talk about Dark Souls. Because everything that we've talked about is like in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like,
The whole thing.
the bonfire, rest at a bonfire. The game, aesthetically and story-wise, kind of makes it all about the bonfire. But if you look at it another way, it's really about the resting. Creates a safe space. The game is effectively paused. It's like the only way to like not get attacked in that game. It allows you to focus on yourself. You level up. That's how you spend your experience points. It heals you, replenishes resources, allows you to travel, which not many games allow you to do that while you're sleeping.
Efficient use of time.
Exactly. You even manage your inventory like at the resting spot.
Yeah, and just to call out, in Scholar of the First Sin, the remake of Dark Souls 2, or the reshuffle of, you have encounters at a bonfire, which they do everything. We're in Dark Souls right now.
That's kind of a scary thought. So, what are we kind of getting at with this whole thing? Is that rest can be productive, or rest is productive, right? There's lots of things that it enables, there's lots of things that it lets you do, and rest is important. Rest is vital to survival. I think that's what all of these games kind of have in common.
And one could even say that MAGFest is a form of rest. If you look at the entire year, like you guys may go to other events, you may gather with friends in other ways, but for many people, MAGFest is the one event during the year where like everybody's here, and we're all gathered together to celebrate and enjoy something that we all love. And I find that to be a very restful activity, anchoring myself to all these other really great people. So, yeah.
Yeah, like Thomas was saying, getting together, being with your friends, rejuvenating together,
It's almost
forming
like
community.
Baldur's Gate 3, not Dark Souls. We're not in Rush.
Yeah. So one more time, rest is productive.
Take your time to rest.
We rest our case. I think that's about it.
Thank you all very much for coming today.
Unfortunately, we don't really have any time for questions, but there's few enough of you if you want to come up or talk to us
Yeah,
after.
we'll hang out for a bit in case you want to keep
Yeah.
chatting. For those of you who are dipping out, please have a safe drive, flight, whatever home, and we'll see you next year.
Restful drive.
Well,
Not too restful.
not too restful if you're the one driving, but thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Thank you very much.